Ferrari Grand Prix Challenge was developed by AI System Tokyo and published by Flying Edge in 1992. Plays like Super Monaco GP, but not nearly as well. It looks poor in the graphics department and has some of the worst sound effects I've heard on the Genesis. I have no clue where those engine sounds came from, but they're awful. One of the worst racing games I've played, even if you can customize your Ferrari. Sad too, because this game has 16 tracks. Mario Andretti Racing was developed by High Score Productions and Stormfront Studios and published by EA in 1994. I usually like what both of these developers have to offer, but I thought this was a miss for me. Choose from 3 types of vehicles: Indy, Stock, and Sprint. I guess it's the only other game to offer stock cars for the NASCAR fans, and there's plenty of vehicle customization along the way once you get into it, but I just didn't care for the graphics and gameplay enough in this one to enjoy it. ESPN Speed World was developed by Park Place Productions and published by Sony ImageSoft in 1994. I'll give this game some credit for being unique and offering the fans of NASCAR a pretty cool game to play until later, more playable versions came out. Graphics seem a little underdeveloped, but I thought it was playable and enjoyed it for a few minutes at least. Not the best racing game, but also not the worst. Newman Haas IndyCar featuring Nigel Mansell was developed by Gremlin Graphics and published by Acclaim in 1994. Supposed to be a sequel to Nigel Mansell's World Championship Racing, but I feel like it's inferior in every way. Still, maybe not the worst game on the list overall, but if you're going to choose one, I'd say go with Nigel Mansell's World Championship Racing. RoadBlasters was developed and published by Tengen in 1991. Not exactly like the typical racing games on the list so far, more like an auto-scroller with some shooting, but I felt like it needed to be mentioned. 3 difficulties to choose from with some track variation. No acceleration button, your car will pick up speed on its own in RoadBlasters. Just use the A button to use your weapons and steer your way to victory. Hard Drivin was developed by Sterling Silver Software and published by Tengen in 1990. Marketed as the only true driving simulator, Hard Drivin is a driving sim style game, but it's nothing to tell all your friends about. You have 2 tracks, Stunt and Speed. Choose one and get on with some of that sweet driving sim action. Not much to talk about when it comes to music and sound effects except for this cow moo when you run into it. Any fans of the hard driving or race driving games? Chase HQ 2 was developed by ITL and published by Taito in 1993. I didn't mind this game too much. You get 3 vehicles to choose from to chase the criminal, and the gameplay isn't the worst. More fun than RoadBlasters, but not as fun as Rock and Roll Racing is where we can place Chase HQ 2. Graphics and music worked just fine, and if you haven't tried this one, it's at least worth a try. Race Drivin was developed by Poly Games and published by Tengen in 1990. The sequel to Hard Drivin, and we add 2 new tracks, Custom and Super Stunt. If you enjoyed Hard Drivin, then I'm sure you'll like Race Drivin, but it's not necessarily my favorite racing game on the Genesis. Early, low polygon style graphics and little to no music or sound effects, but if this is your style of game, then more power to you. Nigel Mansell's World Championship Racing was developed and published by Gremlin Graphics in 1992. Comparable to the Super Monaco GP series, maybe not as quality overall, but still worth a try. Choose from 12 professional drivers and 16 tracks to keep the gameplay interesting. Super Hang-On was developed and published by Sega in 1989. It originally came out as an arcade cabinet in 1987, but ported to the Genesis a couple years later. This isn't Road Rash as far as insane soundtrack, weapons, and bike upgrades, but it's still a good game overall. You don't have a replica motorcycle like the cabinet to use as a controller, but between the solid gameplay and music, Super Hang-On deserves its spot somewhere midway on the list. Not to mention, the physics, along with the track and asset scaling, paved the way for games like Road Rash, so keep that in mind. OutRunners was developed and published by Sega in 1993. I expected this to just be a better version of OutRun, but that wasn't the case in my opinion. OutRunners looks and plays well, but not as well as OutRun, and I didn't care for the mandatory split screen in every race. Some cool characters and vehicles to choose from, and you'll see some nice scenery along the way while jamming to some decent music. But if you're going to play an OutRun game on the Genesis, maybe stick to the original. The Duel Test Drive 2 was developed by Distinctive Software and published by Accolade in 1992. Very well presented game, from vehicle selection screen to gameplay. I like the screen layout with the gear shifter and speedometer moving as you accelerate, and all of the finer details like actual characters in the vehicles you pass. Vehicle variety and scenery assets. Music was chill and enjoyable. There are a bunch of test drive games, and it's cool to see one of them on the Genesis. OutRun 2019 was developed by Hertz and published by Sega in 1993. I like the futuristic look of the tracks and vehicles in this game, but that's probably the biggest appeal. The gameplay is smooth, and I'd play this over OutRunners any day of the week. OutRun 2019 is worth a try if you're a fan of the OutRun series. I don't know what it is about the original Super Monaco GP, but I do prefer it over this one slightly. I feel like the gameplay may be a little smoother. That being said, Super Monaco GP2 is another exceptional Genesis racing game. Super Monaco GP2 was developed and published by Sega in 1992. Super Monaco GP2 is a solid racing game overall. It's got everything you've grown to love from the original, with slightly more polished graphics.
Keep it up.
Super Monaco GP was developed and published by Sega in 1989. I really do like the Super Monaco series. It's a staple racing series on the Genesis, in my opinion. It also has this insane Easter egg. Check out more Easter eggs in my 100 Sega Genesis Easter eggs video, link in the video description. Super Monaco GP looks and plays well with decent music and sound effects also. Good game overall. Combat Cars was developed and published by Accolade in 1994. Music was actually really enjoyable, but I expected more combat. I didn't see any power-ups in the couple of races I played, and don't remember being hit with anything, but hey. Out of the handful of games of this style on the Genesis, this may be my least favorite in the gameplay department, mainly due to the straight overhead view camera angle. Not a bad game overall though. Super Off-Road was developed by the Leland Corporation and published by Ballistic in 1993. I used to play something similar on computer a long time ago. Don't remember the name, but it had a similar upgrade system. I had more fun than I expected with Super Off-Road. Graphics aren't anything special, but they work, and the gameplay is the main pull here anyway. It's fun. Sound effects and music aren't my favorite, but still not complaining much with gameplay being as fun as it was. Lotus Turbo Challenge was developed by Magnetic Fields and published by EA in 1992. Pretty fun gameplay, reminds me of OutRun meets Road Rash. Maybe not as good as either of those. I do like the Lotus series when it comes to racing games on the Genesis though. Obstacles on the road keep things interesting, and you have several tracks to race through in various conditions. Sound effects are okay, and there isn't much music during gameplay, but I'd say Lotus Turbo Challenge is still worth a playthrough. Championship Pro-Am was developed by Rare and published by Tradewest in 1992. Rare was one of my favorite developers of all time, and they did a good job with this one, as per usual. The gameplay is addicting and simple. I wouldn't mind the camera being a little more zoomed out, but other than that, I thoroughly enjoy what I played. Simply pick up upgrades on the track while racing to upgrade your vehicle, and zip through some quick races. Music and sound effects are great. You even get a horn by pressing B or C. What more could you ask for? Lotus II was developed by Magnetic Fields and published by EA in 1993. Faster paced than the original Lotus Turbo Challenge, and I did enjoy the gameplay a little more. You can select from 3 different cars, and they even give you the option to select from a handful of music tracks to listen to while you race. Definitely an improvement and a solid series overall. Kawasaki Superbike Challenge was developed by Lancor and published by Domark in 1994. Certain features like camera tilt when turning and some of the graphics remind me of Formula 1 in a good way, and after further research I found that Kawasaki Superbike Challenge was built on the same engine as Formula 1, so that makes a lot of sense. It's not a simulator racing game and it's not Road Rash, but it's a decent game and worth a try if you haven't played it yet. It has a good feel to it, especially at high speed, and boasts a total of 14 tracks. If you've played this one, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Formula 1 was developed by Lancor and published by Domark in 1993. I don't remember playing this one lately, but it's pretty awesome. Same team that developed Kawasaki Superbike Challenge, but slight changes to camera movement and collision animations make Formula 1 stand out. I thought it was very well presented and gameplay was smooth. Didn't take much getting used to in order to have fun. Check this one out if you haven't. Rock'n'Roll Racing was developed by Blizzard and published by Interplay in 1994. It's a vehicular combat racing game, but probably the best of the 16-bit era. Graphics and track design are above average. As the title implies, there are several licensed rock and roll and heavy metal tracks to be heard. No lyrics, but still pretty cool. There's an announcer that gives a play-by-play on all the action, but I find this feature to be the worst part of the game as it just interrupts one of the best parts of the game, the music. Let me know your thoughts on Rock'n'Roll Racing in the comments.
Knockout. Viper finishes second. Rip takes a weak third. Flag drop. Snake fades into last. Rip is dominating the race.
Skitchin was developed and published by EA in 1994. Cool rollerblade game where you boost your speed by catching a ride behind vehicles. Done by the same team that did the Road Rash series, you can see the resemblance. Gameplay is fun, you basically skitch and punch your way to victory, and you can throw in a trick or two if you'd like along the way. Music suits the game well and sound effects were fine. I liked the overall presentation of Skitchin, and I'd suggest giving it a try if you're a fan of Road Rash. Top Gear 2 was developed by Gremlin Interactive and published by Vic Tokai in 1994. I'm a big Vic Tokai fan and they did a great job as per usual with this one. The control and feel of the driving is so smooth, it simply outplays most games on the list. In the gameplay department, like Road Rash, the music and sound effects are great and the drifting feels awesome once you get used to it. Graphically, Top Gear 2 looks solid. The original game was exclusive to Super Nintendo. It would have been nice to see them both on the Genesis. Virtua Racing was developed and published by Sega in 1994. One of the few games I owned back in the day. Had a lot of fun with this one back then, but it's certainly still just as challenging. Your choice of automatic or manual, and 3 courses to choose from. Medium or expert were out of the question for me today, but still enjoyed the gameplay. I'm a big fan of the sound effects and music. Huge cartridge due to the SVP chip and polygon graphics. I didn't care for them at first, but they grow on you after a few races. Good game overall, but not an entry-level arcade-style racer. Virtua Racing takes some getting used to. Road Rash 3 was developed and published by EA in 1995. Road Rash 3 is top-notch, just like the previous 2 titles, but I do like the original Road Rash games slightly more than 3. The graphics look a little smoother in this one overall, but the additional bike turning animation doesn't look that great. Music and sound effects are good, so just punch a cop and a few bikers and you're bound to have some fun with this one too. Micro Machines was developed and published by Codemasters in 1993. This game is pretty awesome overall. Music and sound effects are done very well, and it has some of the most smooth controls for a racing game. I love the variety in both graphics and assets when it comes to track design and vehicles to race with. Road Rash was developed and published by EA in 1991. I don't think Road Rash needs much of an introduction, but let me give you a quick reminder on how good it was and still is. Gameplay is super smooth and easy to figure out. The exact same control scheme is used for Skitchin. The graphics and backgrounds look great. The background transitioning as you play through a track is visually stunning, especially for the time. And last but not least, the sound effects are good and the music is amazing. Steal an opponent's weapon, beat them down, win race, rinse, and repeat. Build up enough cash to upgrade your bike for the harder tracks. If you haven't played the Road Rash series for some reason, please give it a try, and if you have, I'd love to hear your opinion on the series in the comments. OutRun was developed and published by Sega in 1991. I forgot how awesome this game is on the Genesis. I've played the arcade cabinet, and sure, it's better, but this port is nearly arcade quality in every way. Select one of 4 chill music tracks and get to racing. Use the C button to shift from low to high, and enjoy some of the smoothest racing gameplay on the Genesis. Graphics are great. The scaling reminds me of Space Harrier. Let me know what your favorite OutRun game is in the comments and why.
Techno Cop Busters.
Road Rash 2 was developed and published by EA in 1992. Just like the original, there isn't much bad involved with this one. Road Rash 2 is the version I played most of back in the day, and I may enjoy the soundtrack slightly more than the original, but that's likely a biased opinion. Same gameplay and graphics you'd expect, with a slightly different menu system, that's about the only difference. Race and upgrade your way through some new tracks, with a few new bikes. As always, thanks for watching and stay tuned for a new video.